All right, guys, you can, right off the bat, you can see I'm in the office, and I'm probably a little bit shiny because just my luck, I chose like the hottest week of the freaking year to come back to California. Last night at 10 p.m., it was still like 95 degrees out. Tomorrow it's going to be 106. And I know everybody in the comment section is like, oh, well, I live on the sun and it's way hotter on the sun. Okay, I get it. It's probably hotter in other areas, but just know that I am miserable. I can't have the AC running while I record in this tiny office because it like messes up the audio, and then I have all these lights and all these computers, and it sucks. Okay, it sucks. Just let me complain, jeez. So guys, you know that I've been traveling around a little bit lately, and I've been getting a bunch of questions on what it's like to travel with wristwatches. And the funny thing is, at the beginning of my channel, I actually made an episode, I think, dedicated to traveling with watches and like what you should do. And I realized that that was like many years ago, and instead of having to link that over and over again to all the people writing to me now about this, I figured I'd kind of do a little bit of a refresher because, let's face it, my episodes are probably a little bit more streamlined. They're probably a little bit better to watch, and I'm just more attractive now. Oh. Seriously though, I am. Actually, you know what? I'm probably not more attractive than I used to be because I am fucking bald. It's okay though, because at the beginning of my channel, everyone accused me of wearing a toupee anyway, but that was real hair. Now I probably do need a toupee, but I'm not doing it, and you can't make me. My beard's fake though. It is 12:56 p.m. Let's get down to business. Okie dokie, guys. So traveling can be fairly hectic and stressful already. I mean, whether or not you're going to a leisurely place on vacation, still getting there, preparing for the trip, getting all your things in order, it can just be a headache. And take it from me, I just did that. I was traveling around and filming and working and scheduling shipments and everything while I was traveling, and it was just, you know, it was a headache. It was fun while I was there at the destinations, but, you know, coordinating everything, packing all my equipment, making sure I had everything, making sure all the equipment and all my luggage came with me, and then made it to the destination, making sure I didn't forget anything. You know, all these things we take into consideration while we travel. And then when you add a crippling watch addiction and separation anxiety when it comes to having to be around multiple watches all the time, that just adds a whole new layer of craziness into the equation. So what is it like traveling with wristwatches in 2022? Well, I have a few tips for you. The first thing is to consider where you're going and what you're going to do while you're there, okay? Is this a work trip? Are you going to be wearing more formal attire, or is this more leisurely by the beach where there's going to be sand? Perhaps you're going to be getting wet on this trip. Maybe you're going someplace rainy. Maybe you're going swimming. Maybe you're going hiking and you need something a bit more durable. And then here's something that you may not even consider. Is the place you're going relatively safe? Because I'm going to tell you right now, if you're coming to Los Angeles, that like excludes a lot of watches that you can be wearing. Maybe you shouldn't even be wearing a watch. According to LAPD, you shouldn't. And I covered that whole bulletin they laid out for us on the podcast, Things That Keep Me Up at Night. You can go check out that podcast. I'll leave a link in the description below, and you can listen to it on, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor. Anywhere you find your podcast, you can check out my podcast. We actually just recently sat down with the media production editor at Worn & Wound, Kat Shoulders. She gave me some really cool insight on what it's like being a woman in this male-dominated watch world. She's a really cool person that I've known since I really started here on social media. So yeah, check out the podcast. So okay, we've already figured out where we're going and we already know what we're going to do while we're there. So how are we going to actually like physically carry the watches with us? Well, you got to have a decent travel case, okay? So I get a plethora of comments from people giving other people tips. And it's funny, when I bring up traveling anywhere, people always ask, how do you carry your watches? And inevitably, I get people chiming in and being like, oh, I put my watches in a sock, and then I put that sock in another sock, and then I put that sock in another sock, and I roll it up, and it really protects the watch. Dude, I guess you could do that, but there's an easier way, and the easier way is just to spend a couple bucks on a really inexpensive carrying case like this. These are not a sponsor of the channel, but I bought this on Amazon. I believe this one's called a Watch Pod, but there's a bunch of various manufacturers that make things like this. It looks like a little donut, and the cool thing about this one specifically is it comes, each pod comes with its own microfiber, so that's a nice little touch. You can clean up your watches. Also, it's a hard case, so it's going to be fairly resilient to knocks and things getting thrown around, so that's very nice. I believe also WatchPod has one that carries like three. It's like 3 donuts side by side, but you're gonna understand why in a little bit, why I only brought one with me. Now, if you're bringing multiple watches, you can carry something like this, which is my Wolf carrying case. This is a hard case, and then when you open it, let's see, there's 2 compartments. The watches lay flat, and there's an integrated pillow to protect the crystal. Very, very cool. And again, neither of these are super duper expensive. I'll leave affiliate links in the description below. Again, when you use those Amazon affiliate links, the channel gets a kickback, and we really do appreciate it. Next thing I want to bring up is, regardless of which case you choose, always have that case in your carry-on. Do not put it in any checked bags, because if that checked bag gets lost, your watches are gone as well, and you don't know who's looking at your bags and this and that. I'll just always keep it in your carry-on. And furthermore, when you're going through the checkpoint, the TSA checkpoint, do not under any circumstances take off the watch you have on your wrist. They will almost never tell you to take it off. All you have to do is walk through the little detector thing, put your arms up, and that thing spins around and it takes pictures of your dick. At least that's what I'm pretty sure that's what it's doing. They're gonna need a macro lens for me, baby. Wait, no, wait. All you have to do is walk through the checkpoint, and then they're gonna ask to look at your wrists, and you're gonna have to go like this, and then they might wave a wand on it or whatever. They've never asked me to take off my wristwatch, and I've heard of horror stories of people taking off their watch, putting it in one of those tubs, and then someone on the other side waits for it and grabs it and then runs, and then who knows where the heck they go. So just don't ever take your watch off when you're going through security. So, okay, I mentioned that I only carried this singular watch pod. Why? Well, it's because I don't think you ever really need to be traveling with more than 2 watches, one on your person and one in the case. Now, I understand. I'm the time teller. A lot of people think that I'm like walking around with Pelican cases filled with watches wherever I go, and that's really not it. I usually carry 2 watches. Now, I consider what I'm doing on whichever trip I'm going, but typically I have one that's more of a resilient everyday piece with a decent water resistance rating, and I carry another one that's a bit more dressy and a bit more formal, so I kind of have all my bases covered with just 2 pieces. And the next thing that I want to bring up is kind of the cheesiest point in the whole episode. Have fun! Have fun with this new experience of being forced to spend extended periods of time with only a couple watches. Why do I say this? Well, as collectors, you know, part of the fun is being able to sample a bunch of different things. Like, we fill up our watch boxes with different things that interest us, with various complications, with various materials used, with various dial types and crystals, and all these various components that are very different when we're looking at like all the different kinds of watches that exist. But when you travel with only 1 or 2 watches, let's say you're on a week trip, you're being forced to spend that whole week with just 1 watch. Or if you're traveling with 2 watches, like I took a 10-day trip, I had 2 watches, I kind of learned a lot about the 2 watches that I brought with me because I was forced to spend that extended period of time with just those 2 watches instead of having access to all the watches that I own. So you learn a lot when you're forced to spend extended periods of time with only a couple watches, and I think that adds a whole new fun, exploratory, interesting facet to this watch collecting hobby. Really learning about what you like, what you don't like, how well a watch works, how wearable it is, how comfortable it is to travel with that. I think that's a really fun facet. And again, I'm obsessed with this hobby because there's a never ending amount of information to consume. And so when I find another thing to learn about a watch I've owned for a while, it's just that much more rewarding. And I hope I'm able to convey that clearly to you guys. But yeah, that's kind of a woo-woo out there thing. But yeah, just have fun with whichever watch you choose to travel with. And again, I travel with two typically. I don't think you really ever need to travel with more than that. Which brings us to the two watches that I traveled with on my little New England trip. Well, the first one, the one that I was wearing like the majority of the time, like 90% of the time, was this Vero Workhorse, okay? I very recently reviewed this watch. I've had it for a couple months now, and it is just a pleasure to wear, okay? They're not a sponsor of this channel. They did not pay me to review this watch. I absolutely love this watch, dude. Under $400, Cerakote case, sapphire crystal, really great water resistance rating with threaded crowns. They're both threaded, internal rotating timing bezel, and a really functional chronograph complication. The only tricky thing is that it's the lower orange button that actuates the chronograph, and it's the upper one that clears it. So yeah, and it comes with its own bull bar, and I'm just wearing it on this factory Velcro strap that I happen to love. I know one of my channel members, Jordan, didn't like the strap, but I actually really love it. So this was a very easy to wear, easy to read, durable chronograph that has a great water resistance rating. Again, sapphire crystal and Cerakote case. So if I'm knocking it around in the airplane or, picking up my luggage and stuff, I don't have to worry about babying this thing. I've traveled all around New England, all around LA. I've been wearing this watch a whole lot since I got it, and there's like not a scratch that I can see on it. I love that it has drilled lugs so I can change the strap if I choose, and it's just a very fun modern take on a durable watch that's analog, right? It is mecha quartz, but it's analog. It's not a G-Shock, which there's nothing wrong with G-Shocks. You guys know that I absolutely freaking love G-Shocks. So let's take a look at the next watch that I brought with me on my trip. This is a watch I refer to as the wedding watch because pretty much every wedding I've ever been to, I've worn this watch. My Rolex Date 1500. I don't know if my camera's focusing. We're going to get macro footage of all of this. I absolutely love this watch. It's everything you need in a watch. An oyster case with a threaded crown, at least a 100 meter water resistance rating, a date complication, and it's the most perfect Rolex reference number in my opinion. Drilled lugs, Man Cave leather strap. Shout out to Man Cave Leather for picking up their operations again in Canada. We're so happy that they got there safe. Again, they had to leave Ukraine because of the conflict going on over there. So Mikola and his family, we love you. Support Man Cave Leather. And I don't know if you know this, but in all of my episodes, I have a link to Man Cave Leather products. They are not a sponsor of me, but they have supported my channel since the beginning, and I absolutely love their products. They make the best leather watch straps, period. So yeah, guys, I have a more durable, resilient watch that I can swim with, no problem, with the Vero Workhorse, and I have a more dressy, formal piece that, again, is fairly durable as well, that I could also swim with, I suppose, with the Rolex Date. But yeah, I covered all my bases with just those two watches, and again, I kept that Rolex in this one watch pod, and I had it in my carry-on at all times. And again, while it was in my backpack going through security, no one except the TSA knew it was in there. So I didn't like take it off my wrist and put it in the tub, because then dude, I heard a horror story a couple years ago of someone taking off their Batman and putting it in the tub, and of course some knucklehead on the other side was like, that looks expensive, took it and bolted. Huge bummer. I've also heard people being like, well, how far can they get? Well, they can literally like get on a plane potentially and you don't know where they're going. So yeah, huge bummer. Especially if you're like waiting to get through the security and your item gets to the other side faster and that person runs off with your stuff. You're not going to be able to push through security. You're going to have everybody tackling you thinking that you're some freaking crazy person. Especially if you look like me. They're going to be like, terrorist. But guys, those are some easy, quick tips on traveling with your watches in 2022. And yeah, maybe in another 5 years, I'll make another episode about traveling with your watches. But typically, just, these will keep your bases covered. just be safe, be smart, and have some common sense. All right, guys, don't take off your watches and get a decent travel kit. Stop putting your watches in socks, guys. All right, guys, check out the podcast, subscribe to this channel, check out T3 Time to Drive, where we're uploading every single month. And again, the podcast we're doing every single week. And then here we're doing multiple times a week. We live stream every single Saturday. So much going on. Thank you for supporting me. Like, comment, and subscribe. I will catch you on the next one. I'm Jory Goodman, the Time Teller, and always remember, I didn't invent time. I just tell it.